And we are going to create a sound environment. And therefore, everybody will have to participate somehow or other.
Kailangan bang mag-compose? Magandang tanong yun. Kailan po mag-compose ba talaga yung mga bata?
During this creation, each section of the audience will come in at certain times until the whole thing develops into one whole environmental sonority.
Anything to uplift the spirit of man should be experimented on. The artist should be able to enhance its own identity and to keep it alive. To keep it alive. I think that's the role of the artist. And I'm doing just a bit of that in my music. I'm trying to enhance and to reflect what is within the aesthetic framework of these traditional expressive practices. So I'm focusing on expression, on the expression.
Pico de Banduria, I'm sorry, Pico de Banduria.
Ramon Santos was a community musician. He performed for the church. He was a conductor, and he wrote masses for the church, and clearly came in as an undergraduate as a composer, conductor/composer. So he set out to do further studies in composition. And then he discovers musicology much later on in his career. So you can actually juxtapose the two and you can say they're opposites, but complementary.
You can actually see that some of these instruments are made of bamboo. You can immediately recognize, no, that these are native plants. No, these are made out of native plants. The underlying idea here is something that is closer to nature. Dun sa nasabi ko na nung nagwo-workshop tayo, we usually spend the first 20 minutes of the whole production orienting the audience, no, on their part, their involvement. So in other words, everybody is involved. When the audience starts coming in, some of them will be handed these instruments. Some of the kids, the performers themselves, no, will be handing these instruments. They will be in costume already. We don't want the kind of formality that you see in an opera.
He works with modern institutions, with government institutions, with whatever institution is available.
UP is the home of all the intellectuals here in the country. I'm sure we will be able to find something.
At ibandila ang sariling atin sa pangmundong kalipunan ng sining at kultura.
I was first year in the seminary at this time. That's San Jose Seminary. That was the only building standing in that whole area. But of course now there are so many buildings. it was turned into a hospital. This was a seminary. There I was. As a priest, a Jesuit priest. My classmates in the seminary. And here I was a choir member. I sang in the choir here.
It was over 50 years ago, just a little over, when Ramon Pagayon Santos first stepped into the university as a freshman at the College of Music. Fascinated with the late Romantic style of Mahler and Debussy, the young composer from Pasig would train under Hilarion Rubio and Lucio San Pedro, eventually earning a Bachelor of Music in Composition and Conducting.
I enjoyed listening to a lot of music. And of course, identifying the composers of the different musical pieces. I loved the library very much. When I was a student, I listened. Even if the music or the literature was not required, I would listen to other recordings, to other types of music. For example, I discovered contemporary music right here in this library. This recording of Edgar Varese really floored me because I was asking if this was music at all. I said, well, the very fact that they made this into a recording, there must be something to it. It really aroused my curiosity. This is probably the turning point in my musical career, this avant-garde piece of Edgar Varese. It was this junk. It was all mostly sounds. At the time, I thought it was noise. But now that I know better, I can relate to different concepts in music making, in creating sounds and putting them together. I kept looking for new things. I think that's part of my orientation as a composer, looking for new things all the time. You see, these are new things that have been placed here. That statue over there is quite new. So this is actually attached. Uy! Hi! Kamusta? Kasi dino-document ako nito. Galing sa France siya. Dino-document ako. Kaya sabi ko, punta tayo dito sa church. At kasi dito ako lumaki eh. Oh yeah. This is my good friend. He was a member of our choir. So this is June Gonzalez. And
we formed the first male choir in Pasig.
Yeah, the first
1960.
1960.
1960.
Yeah.
And he was our conductor. We were around 12 or 13
Yeah.
at the time. He's very strict, you know. Very strict conductor. You can imagine the hardship of Ramon.
Yeah.
Of all the 12 or 13, only 3 of them knows how to read the notes. Yeah, we're all play by ear only.
But remember this.
Yeah.
This is the place where we held Mikado.
Mikado, that was
The operetta that we produced.
Imagine we produced an operetta. Most of us don't know how to read notes.
But they were very good singers.
We were the first choir to sing on TV, mass TV, because of Ramon.
When we were in elementary school, we sort of knew each other already.
Yeah, because we are one street,
Yeah.
and his sisters are close friends. In fact, we have some relationship already.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, most of the people in Pasig at that time, which was quite a small town, were all related to each other.
Anong nangyari kay Boy? Lassi Nasilat sa kahoy.
That was my first car. I called it Ludwig.
A few years later at Indiana University, where he received his Master of Music with distinction, he began to write works that reveal a neoclassic aesthetic. Working for his doctorate at the State University of New York, Santos dabbled with atonality and serialism.
This is really a product of my atonal studies. Very angular, different meters, 4/4, 5/8, 3/4, 4/4, 2/4, 5/16. At that time, I was discovering new things. I was dabbling with different elements and different colors and different materials, and I was excited. I was exploring the orchestra in terms of colors, more than the language itself or the form. Of course, there was language, there was form, but these were not really of primary importance. To me, the play with colors is more significant in my pieces. That also tells something about where I came from. In my being a Filipino, I was dealing more with atmosphere, with the environment, more than the form itself. That's how I would analyze the inner workings of my spirit at the time. But then when I came back to the Philippines, I assumed a different perspective. Gradually, I was beginning to appreciate For example, the gamelan, the kulintang, the bamboo instruments of the kalinga, playing interlocking patterns. This was different from the atonal perspective because this was a truly different kind of music. It expresses a different kind of philosophy, a different kind of aesthetic. That was my wife, Lourdes. I met her at Indiana, in the US, and we got married in the US. See, we were having roast pig. I think this was in New York City. And this was in West Virginia. This was in Washington, D.C. There, Buffalo. I was fascinated with the human voice because the human voice is a very versatile instrument. To me, the voice is really what expresses your humanity, your being alive. I had a growing number of students in composition, which include Chino Toledo, Vern de la Peña, Jonas Baez, all these people. I was the only person dealing with contemporary music.
Well, it was my pride to be one of the selected students of Ramon Santos. Number one, he's the dean, right? So you get to meet in the dean's office, not a regular classroom. And it's me, Jonas Baez, and a couple of other students. And it was like, you're, at least from my perspective, we might be the envy of the whole composition department because we get to hang out with the dean. And it was cool in the sense that our lessons were not limited to the class hour. He treated us students as part of his family. You know? He would bring us to his concerts and we would learn during rehearsals. I remember him inviting us to his house, asked me, why don't you perform your piece? I remember a piece I wrote for him. All it was a short poem saying you hang a set of wind chimes in a tree and then you give this guy a nose flute and then the nose flute player should react to the sound of the wind chime. I wrote it was very cerebral, of course, as an exercise, but we asked me to perform it, to have it performed in his house.
If Jose Masada is my grandfather, Ramon Santos is my father. I always thought of it that way. Ramon Santos is my teacher, my direct teacher. There are things where I would hesitate to show myself to Maseda. I'd show Maseda how strong I am. But with Santos, I'm more open. He's more endearing in that sense of because he's a father, he's closer to me in that sense.
And then with me there looming, I also ghost wrote for him. For example, in Flight of the Sparrow.
We should look for that.
San Pedro and I wrote the music actually. But his name appeared as the composer, and we were the orchestrator.
And you made money?
I got paid 300 pesos.
Wow, that was big at the time. Yeah? That was the works.
I put down the music on the moviola.
Yeah.
You counted
Counted frames.
Ramon Santos is a very important go-to. A very important, for me in my age, would not hesitate to ask him, did I do the right thing? I have a project, and then he sees the project, and then I'd come to him, did I do the right thing?
He wants me to explore. He wants me to create newer things. Well, newer in 1970s is definitely different to what is new now. He wants me to use Filipino Asian materials and concept. I think during that time we really don't know if it is new or traditional because it goes side by side. We have the gamelan ensemble, we have the traditional Philippine music ensemble, and we can use this in creating new music. So it's really it's in front of us, and we can do so many things.
Probably half of my output is for voice. I can trace this way back when I was in the seminary. I used to sing Gregorian chant and all that. I was always dealing with vocal music.
He had works that were Christian in nature also.
I was writing masses for the choir. I was like a maestro di capella at the time. There was a point in time when I was actually thinking whether to go on in the priesthood or go out. But I said, if I go on, I want to be a missionary. So I don't know if I fulfill that wish. I studied Latin for 4 years in the seminary. Classical Latin. You know, we would read Julius Caesar in Latin, Ovid in Latin, and Cicero in Latin. Quousque tandem abutere, Catalina Patricia Nostra, or something like that.
So the Roman Empire arrived all the way to the Philippines.
Yes, right. I painted this when I was going out of the seminary. So these were souls. In fact, I kind of pictured myself as one of these souls going up But instead of having an easy time reaching for the light, now that I went out of the seminary, I had more difficulty reaching the light.
Kailangan bang mag-compose?
Magandang tanong yun. Nagko-compose ba talaga yung mga tao? Ano ba ang composition? Kung sino mga merong patakaran?
I met Dr. Maceda in around 1963-64. I think he was about to graduate in ethnomusicology at the time. He was a professor of piano here at the College of Music. That was his main appointment.
Jose Maceda was a classical pianist, firstly, and then became a musicologist, and on the side also learned composition. Had a bit of training in concrete with Schaeffer. Maceda did not really have that baggage, probably you can say, of romanticism, of that long line of Filipino writing and classical music. Aside from being a classical pianist, I'm saying as a composer.
Jose Maceda he's a composer, and he's not only a composer, he's a person who engaged society through his music.
One of Maceda's most controversial pieces is Ugnayan, a work designed for 20 radio stations, by which 20 different parts consisting of recorded native instruments would be broadcast simultaneously at a given time of the day. The work was intended to bring people together with their transistor radios in groups of 20 or more people in a public community setting.
Everything falls under that kind of engagement, the use of a lot of people, the aesthetics of having sound masses, sounds of bamboo, sounds of gongs, sounds that actually was to redefine the hegemonic soundscape of Western culture that was prevalent in the 60s and the 70s and to the 80s. So that is Jose Maceda, and to me he's a grandfather.
Let me just say that his works have been conceived as philosophical and expressive constructs of the theory and aesthetics of village musical traditions in the Philippines and in Asia. It is a work of extensive, if not massive dimension that stands out among its other masterpieces, which has been inspired by society and culture, specifically the role of community in Filipino life.
I met him when he was recruiting students to play in his concerts. That's how I met him. I was able to read his scores, and the score of Edgar Varese and the score of Yanis Sinakis. I played in those pieces. Oh, sometimes wood block. Sometimes the bamboo buzzer. Different instruments.
It was first performed in 1966 in a concert called The Music of Today here at this very auditorium, where at the same time he had a program which included Ravel's Miamis songs, I think, some music from the Maguindanao, lute and kuntang, and the Chinese pipa.
The very fact that he was organizing these concerts of avant-garde music as well as traditional music, you know, his concerts were quite unique because his concert would, for example, feature the songs of Melarme together with kulintang music, together with the music of Edgar Varese, and also his own music. That was a very unique way of programming pieces that I heard for the first time, and it made a big impression on me. So that my curiosity was really awakened by all these experiences. It was only when I became dean that I became more aware of what he was doing in ethnomusicology. And from then on, I became more and more involved in his work. Having encountered so many different musical cultures in the Philippines at the time, remember, I started playing in the gamelan, and then I started to play the pipa. These were all programs that Jose Maceda instituted. So our paths were beginning to somehow converge. Parangal means a tribute. Tribute to SW, representing Sunardi Wisnu Subroto, who was my teacher in Indonesian and Javanese gamelan. I did not consider the pitch as an important element in this piece. So that this piece can be played with any other gamelan ensemble.
Sunardi was a gamelan master, a gamelan teacher. He came here to teach Javanese gamelan. So as a form of welcoming him, this teacher, Ramon Santos created some sort of an overture.
I was dealing with colors of the gamelan, and the orchestra trying to emulate the colors of the gamelan. This was our production of the Ramayana. That's Hanuman. at the end of the piece, he actually plays. Because my piece, while it is a tribute, does not purport to be an Indonesian piece. The real music comes at the end.
The function here of the composer is really just to introduce the artist, to introduce this culture bearer from Java, and to transfer all the focus on him, and he has control of the piece now.
These drums mean something because in the gamelan, the drum is the conductor. Kandang player is the conductor of the orchestra. And the kandang can really change the pace as well as the whole performance itself. There is a leader in a way, but the leader also is part of the ensemble. That is different from being a conductor, you know. This kind of communal setting is what strikes me as really Asian as against the Western type of hierarchy. In a way, I portray that in many of my pieces that are not written in the Western idiom. Our College of Music, you will see that the Asian music program is very strong. And because the students themselves really take it very seriously, you know. It's not just an elective or anything like that. The UP Center for Ethnomusicology was, of course, established by Jose Maceda. And then when he died in 2004, I took over as executive director of the center. Most of the collection of the center were open reel tapes. Plus, of course, there was the field notes, the library, and then the instrumentarium. So that was the center. These recordings go as far back as 1950s. And they were all recorded by Dr. Jose Maceda, who went all over the Philippines, recording music from traditional music communities. And then also by his assistants. He trained assistants to also record all these musical traditions. Right now, there are about 87 language groups that are represented in the musical collection. So that's fantastic. This is the laboratory where digitization is being done. This is where all the files have been digitized. You know, what fascinated me during my studies in Buffalo was the rate of experiments that was going on. I had a classmate who had a piece for a vacuum cleaner tuned to E flat. There was another one who tried to write music that you could listen to underwater. These are all experiments in experiencing sound.
I remember him talking about this student who came and set up dextrose bottles all over the auditorium so it would drip. So the whole dripping, the entire auditorium was dripping, and that was the composition, part of that.
What I mean is experiment that has a certain concept, an expressive idea, and aesthetics. You can experiment with aesthetics, I think.
I guess that inspired us also to think about those things. We began talking about it in terms of software and hardware. And so my first year, I guess, under Father Maramba, was all hardware, you know, technique and all of that. And when Feliciano came in, bringing in ideas from Isang Yun and all this German school, we scoffed at it. I'm sorry to say that. We scoffed at it and said, that's all hardware. That's not important. What is important is software. And so we were looking for conceptual stuff. And the conceptual stuff we found from Philippine culture.
Siguro sa lalaki na natin sa ating kultura, civilization, kailangan kapag nagkaroon ng konsyensya ng Pilipino kung ano ang tulog, kung ano ang musika.
You belong to a culture and you have to discover where you belong, right? You have to discover that. You have to discover your own identity as a person, as a member of your environment. Okay? So, this is where the parameters are drawn in terms of searching for something new, something to express. You have to express something of yourself as a member of a particular surrounding or a particular culture, for that matter.
Kaya tayo naghahanap. Saan tayo maghahanap? Sa ating kultura at ang nakikita natin yung sinasabi ko nga. Tama ba yan? Ano ba ang tama? Hindi ang tama ay nandito. Paano mo magagamit? Ayan.
We felt composition should have a more profound basis than just the exploration of sound itself. It should have a connection with the world around us, with society, with the environment, with ecology, with personal lives. That was what we meant by software, and we felt very strongly about this. Our models were Maceda and Santos. You know, Maceda's Ognayan, you have villages coming over, bringing transistor radios, and that's performance. That is software for us.
Like the experiments of John Cage, there is a kind of disparity there. Because in the first place, I don't know if they have really discovered their own American American identity. I would respect what they have done, but I would not do it that way.
The American source, we thought lacked soul. They're looking at Asia. Look at John Cage. He's looking at Asia, he's looking at Zen Buddhism, I Ching, and all of that from the perspective of an American in the West. And we were thinking, hey, we're here. They're looking at us. We thought we had more software in that sense.
This is a piece for the Intermission Ritual, which I consider a ritual. Everything that we do is a ritual, like the intermission. This is supposed to be 10 minutes all in all, so because that's the intermission time. The piece must be played in the orchestra pit or any part of the hall except the stage. They were listening to it. So I said, no, don't listen. I told them to go to the toilet or converse or like that. There are different sounds. For example, low voice. Middle voice. And then high voice. So I was always dealing with the voice. And then later on, of course, I began to experiment on vocal sound. The human voice can speak, can converse, but at the same time, it can also produce sound. Ding-ding-a-diyaw was for a chorus, but with kulintang, with timpani, with agong, I used the words to produce the sound. Ding! 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 Ding-ding-a-diyawa. Ding-ding-a-diyawa. Ding! So, the sounds themselves come from the words. Katasanab, katasanab, katasanab. The words say katasanabuklod, katasanabuklod. But I used katas, 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 katas. The S. That's fascinating, you know, when you use the language as the sound itself, as the source of the sound itself. There we were all praying, my brother and I, my mother.
Ramon Santos is one kind of person. I know he's deep inside. There's this deep spirituality, but he also goes to church every Sunday. I remember when we were doing fieldwork in Davao, he never misses Sunday church, and he would say, "Hey, we're going to church." Yeah, I would lag so that I could tell him later, "I'll just stay behind." No, he wouldn't take no for an answer. You get dressed. We're going to church, and it was like a father telling a son, "You go to church." And he has this. He has this practice as a Catholic, Roman Catholic, keeping up with the tradition, but he also has a deeper spirituality behind that.
This is the Pasig Catholic Church, and now it is a kind of a basilica. I served in the masses here when I was a young child. I served as mass server, as a sacristan, we call them. This is practically the same church as I grew up with, except that it has been refurbished and most of the paintings are gone. I used to serve in the masses here as a sacristan, and I also used to ring the church bells here. We used to sing in the choir loft, but now the choir has been situated near the altar, and the choir loft is no longer used. Now everything is all white. But before, there are many pictures painted on the ceiling, including the pictures of the 4 evangelists of the Bible.
So may link ba yung mga passion natin sa Gregorian chant?
Yun na nga, yung mga ganon. Kasi gumamit siya ng liturgy ng liturgical material, pero hindi
Tsaka yung style of singing, monophonic, mga ganyan.
Yeah, oo.
Pero kasi may link din sa atin, kasi traditional style of singing, yung vocal.
You know, during Lent, we have what we call Passion. Passion is the singing or the chanting of the life and suffering of Christ. All the barrios will have passion. We call it actually reading, babasa. Basa means to read. It's passion reading. But they chant it, especially during the Holy Week. And everywhere, for almost 24 hours. Continuous chanting of the life and passion of Christ. When I went to Bellagio, it was Holy Week. So that's what I composed, a Passion Ritual. That in Zambales, in a province in the north. And the Passion melodies there are fantastic, you know. But this one is Filipino. You don't find this in Europe. It is Filipino. And it's sanctioned by the church. critically analyze, hindi ko pa maanong masyado yung westernization natin. Of course, marami nang gumagawa ng ng mga pag-aaral sa colonial period natin, ganyan, si Jojo, si ganyan. Pero siguro yung analytica, yung pag-analyze mo ng impact nung Western culture dito sa isang Asyatikong lugar. Kasi unique yan eh. Unique tayo sa Asia, di ba? Among Asian composers, the tendency is to emulate the West. They were very far from the West before, while the Philippines was westernized. You know, it was a kind of a new experience for them. And that was what was new to them. But to us Filipinos, that was not new. Western music was not new.
There was a time here that we are closer to Beethoven than Kulintang music. It's always like that. That we are more attuned to the music of Mozart than to the Kalinga music. Maybe because of several things, exposures, education, you know. But I think right now it's becoming more boundaryless. I was fascinated with the last concert that I had. The loudest ovation is for the music of Ramon Santos, which is not usually my experience here in this country. I'm coming from another layer of Philippine society. I'm really a conductor of traditional orchestra music, common orchestra music. For several years now, I'm doing a lot of this standard repertoire. So whenever I hear the music of Ramon Santos and Maceda, it's totally different from what I do as a conductor. You know? There's always a hesitation in performing new and newer music here. My function really as a conductor is really to make my musicians understand all those things that he was trying to convey with his music. It's not only the technical aspect of the music, but the expression of the music. I'd always ask the orchestra, my musicians, to understand it in a certain level and not using the point of views that we use in other music. I always program music in a concert with Ramon Santos with a standard repertoire. So there's always a change of attitude and the way of playing and understanding music.
Here, there was a drama, a historical drama, where there was a blood compact between the Spaniards and the Filipinos. I was the Sikatuna, this was the native, and this was the Spaniard there. That's the blood compact They're both drinking their blood. Globalization actually is a Western tradition because, colonization was perpetrated by the West. And therefore, we cannot take this away. It's all there already. Now we are manifesting it through the different ways by which we look at Western tradition. If you look at what is happening now in Southeast Asia, it's all very interesting. Here in the Philippines, we don't have that kind of tradition in our musical life. The Philippines started as a nation when the Spaniards came. So, of course, the kulintang and all that were pre-Hispanic, but these were not really results of courts, for example, in Indonesia, where you have empires. These were just pocket cultures that existed, and most of our people have been colonized, and 80% of them have been Christianized, and so our music really comes from the West.
Christianity has made a great impact in our formation as a nation state. It was used as a tool to be able to not only colonize the country, but to control the minds of the Filipinos. The Catholic Church was even more powerful, in my opinion, than the government during the Spanish colonial times. Catholicism was hegemonic. It was noted by some historians that even the revolutionary fighters, the Katipuneros, they relied on some sort of Christian-derived belief system. This unending push and pull relationship between believing in a God and fighting for the country. Actually, that was so difficult to stamp out in the minds of the Filipinos. Various levels of this kind of belief system found its way in when Philippine society was already being formulated, especially in the American times. The brand of liberalism which Americans had installed in our society, and the way by which it had created a society that was ready for the globalizing, modernizing world, although very US dependent, had a touch also of a Christian component to it, because they could never stamp this out completely. It was part of society itself.
Church bells herald the battle's end. At Santa Toma's first prison liberated, crowds wildly welcome MacArthur and their freedom. Manila is liberated. MacArthur has returned.
Way back in the 16th century, we were already singing Gregorian chant and all that. That's why we have to do our own discovery of the ancient past, and that's what we are doing now.
Siguro mismo opinion ng isang kultura ay limitado rin. Hindi ka nakatira ron eh. Hindi ko kasama, wala kang interval, wala kang causal. Dapat ka, magdano ng counterpoint, dadaan ng counterpoint. Kung ayaw ba ng counterpoint, gumawa ka ibang counterpoint.
Now, we are trying to retrace our traditions to the pre-colonial times, to the pre-colonial expressive cultures. Takumbo is a bamboo zither. So you hit the head on the middle of the zither. There are 3 takumbos here. And then there are 1, 2, 3 sticks. And the rest are gongs. 1 to 20 gongs. Most of these instruments come from the Kalinga. I wanted to project that kind of sound anyway. See, the takumbos and the sticks articulate certain rhythms, and then the gongs create the color and the sustaining notes as against the articulated notes. Gongs are played in different ways. For example, this is a stopped sound as against those sounds that are let to vibrate. It's still, again, emphasis on colors from these instruments. It's part of the discovery. It's part of the exploration. It's part of the experimentation. I'm one who is very excited about discovering new things. I try to experiment on all of this. I don't even remember having written this, for example. Oh, look at that. When I was doing research in the different communities, ethnic communities, I found that repetition was very prevalent in all their musical expressions. But repetition which is not really exact repetition. And that really mystified me.
As a teacher, I remember him always looking at our scores. He would stress that the main character of Asian and Filipino Asian music is subtlety. By that, I suppose, is that anti-romantic, no bombast, no drama, but also non-developmental in a way. It's more like, if you listen to Kulintang music, it's a permutation of the same thing. It continuously changes, but nothing changes at all.
I just try to create something that is not trite. Repetition for the sake of repetition. Something organic. Organic.
Again, probably similar to the music of Glass or Reich, but not as literal.
For example, the music of Terry Riley and Philip Glass, I don't know. It's just for the sake of repetition and all that.
You will find that a lot in his music, how there's this economy and there's this subtlety. But he would always stress that. You have to learn to be able to expound on idea continuously without cluttering the space with so much ideas. Stick to one and stretch that out.
To me, there is something more in creating a continuum. A continuum. It is organic. It is alive. I was demonstrating a nose flute.
Magkaroon ng seeding at ito lang. Kasi Pilipinas, saan ba yan? Saan mo? Hindi alam. At saka, wala ka doon sa mainstream. Hindi ka nakatira sa Paris, hindi ka nakatira sa New York. Kung nakatira ka ron, at gagawa ka ng ganyan, hindi rin pwede yata. Paano sa ka naghahanap ng bandage?
I based some of this music on the practice itself, the so-called musical practice of indigenous people. Sagay po is a commentary on the dichotomy between synchronic and non-synchronic relationships of tones, as well as durational values and timbre densities, all reflecting a sense of temporality in Asian life. They are individual pitches. The most that deviates from that are two pitches that are repeated and repeated and repeated, but in different rhythms. These are the log beams of the yakan. They play that in front of the field. In front of the field, they play that. When they start planting the seeds for farming, they put the seeds on the ground, right? And then they start to play. And they play day and night without stopping. until the seeds sprout. And that's when they stop playing. So, what is their audience? Is this music? Is this music? Probably, yeah, sure. From the Western viewpoint, it is music. But it's not music because there's no audience. Your audience is the plant, is the seed, and the God who energizes the field, right? I put certain rhythmic patterns, but then the players have to improvise on those rhythmic patterns. But the Sagapo, they have their own rhythms, and they have to strictly adhere to these rhythms. Improvisation also is a Western term. Now it is imposed on other cultures, on other traditions, on other expressions, wherein the element of spontaneity can be found, no? But it is not really true. The Yakan, when they play their music, it is on the principle of the lebad. Lebad is a motif, a musical motif. It has rhythm, it has a bit of a melody. But the lebad is used like the use of words. And when you string the words together, you create a sentence, you create a certain meaning. That's the way the lebad works. The lebad is not preconceived. It is like talking, like this. I'm talking now. The Yakan Tagungguan is not improvisatory. Because it is based on a certain meaningful discourse. When you improvise, you have a different motive for improvisation. Sometimes you improvise in order to show so many different variations and so many different things. But that is not the purpose of the lebad. Even if it's extemporaneous, there is a discursive element in it. In other words, it is not improvisation. That's why I call it beyond improvisation. All these Western terms should not be imposed on other musical traditions, on other expressive traditions. Just like Lebad, that orchestral piece that I did, I got that from that idea that out of small motifs like that, you can create something large. And that's the principle. So, I do not imitate the yakan music, but I create out of the yakan principle of music making.
Now let's talk about space. In ancient theater, the body can be considered as the central space by which an entire symbolic language is articulated. Such language contains its own vocabularies that can express the relationship of the body and spirit to both physical and metaphysical environments. Here, this Bharatanatyam dancer has the space in her body.
There is space inside our body. Bharatanatyam, I think, expresses that space. It's the movements actually communicate inwardly to the outside. You know, in the seminary, I was always praying. I enjoy that inner peace, you know, which I find in these musical traditions, you know.
Badiw sa Kapuonan was the very first work that was produced through fieldwork.
Badiw sa Kapuonan means badiw for the divinity. It's an expression of the experience that I had living in the mountains and listening to the different vocal traditions that they had.
So he went out as an ethnomusicologist, you know, an amateur ethnomusicologist, because he did not have formal training. He went to do research, and then with that he produced this piece.
I was trying to recreate that experience in the mountains, where I could feel almost like grandeur. And this grandeur comes from the voices of the elders. And yet, they are singing on a mode where they sing the actual badiw. Like that. It's only like that. This is like a raga, but very, very simple one. It's a simple modal formula, but they are able to sing this in different intensities. Kailangan parating intense. Pagpasok, kahit nag-iisa, lalo na pag nag-iisa, ano, parang hindi nagkakamali. Parang nagkakamali kayo eh. Nag-iisa lang.
When you do badiw, it is always in honor of something or in reference to something. Badiw sa Kapuonan, in reference to to nature or to the deity. He brings something he found in the field and frames it with his music, but it's still there.
It's made up of 11 segments of poetry. Each segment ends with a ching. It's like the gong ageng of the gamelan. It's all phrases going on in a circle. But the music does not change. There are different nuances in the music itself.
He got the form of the badillo, he got the poetic structure, and he gathered stones from the area and used it for the piece. What is special about badillo, it's a product of experiencing the place also. So it's not a detached form that you hear from a recording or that you saw in a performance, but you were there and you experienced badillo singers performing, you experienced the ritual. You were there on the ground, and so the ground literally was brought back in the piece through the use of the stones. The idea of a performer being reduced to playing a stone, it kind of diminishes your role as a specialized musician who plays the trombone or the flute or, a virtuoso. But here you're playing a stone just like you by yourself don't make sense playing the stone, but it's that group, when you put together, then you create that structure. In the same manner that one singer responding to the badillo speaker will not make sense, right? It has to be a community responding to the badillo singer.
What is important is that the voices continue in their manner. They don't have any dynamics or anything like that. It needs a different kind of listening. It's like a solemn ritual. The motif remains almost the same, but not the same. The different entrances of the different voices create a moving sound, and yet it's quite constant. Constancy is there.
Idea of drone, but not as sustained sounds, but small sounds that happen continuously. You're looking at more like a structure versus a kind of sound that you want to imitate. Stones could be anything, but the more important thing there is that you have a melodic line and you have this unpitched drone things going on at the same time.
So, if you have a constant sound like that, then you achieve a certain kind of decorum. And because of the mode, that element of solemnity comes in. ganda't alindog na di abot tanaw, ang hiwaga niya't kapangyarihan, mga taluktok, pumapailan lang sa malayat bughaw na himpapawid. Kabangingan, luntian ng lupain, batbat ng likas na kasaganaan. Himig, simoy pinagkakaisang tinig, sumisingaw sa mga lalamunan ng mga espiritong panlupa at pangkalangitan. Natuklasang poon nitong isang hibla ng katauhan. Divinity discovered by this insignificant mortal. Okay. Our institution was established as a Western music institution. It was established as a conservatory of music. And right now, we are in the time when we are trying to either expand or get away from the purely Western image of a school of music. In fact, that's the reason why I instituted a dance program here. Performing arts in Asia are usually integrated. For example, in Indonesia, karawitan means all performing arts. There was no distinction between music, dance, fine arts, and all that. All artistic performances should be integrated. I'm trying to convince other people here in the university to integrate into a single program all the performing arts.
Doon, sinasabayan mo akong umawit.
We are expanding, so to speak, our horizons in terms of what really is music.
Ako ang reynang dumadahon sa matitipunong bisig ng iyong bawat umaga. Bago natin harapin ang kape, bago hipa ng mga halik ni Bunso ang mainit na kanin,
we had the Philippine Music Festival every year around 1970s to 1980s. There were 3 concerts. One was chamber, one was symphonic, and the other one was dance. But I did not write ballet. I wrote multimedia works with, of course, dancers. Images was a conceptual dance piece. There are 3 movements to that piece. And the first movement is music and dance, but without synchronicity. So that there's a sound and there's a movement, but not synchronized. In other words, there is a kind of disparateness in terms of these 2 elements. And then the second piece is the music imitated by dance. When the trombonist plays a short passage, then the dancer imitates the sound. I was trying to create a statement of the two separate elements in this expression. And then the third movement, of course, is the synchronized action of both the musicians and the dancers. I was expressing a statement on the art forms themselves. This piece was composed for gongs, different types of gongs. I combined all of this gong playing. The choreographer infused a different idea to the dancers. Her model is the buto. The movements are restrained but slow and intuitive. It was a fantastic combination of gongs and then of the buto. These are the experiments that I would like to go into, of combining different languages. Because it's only through what we call music that you can do this, right? And make sense to a certain degree. Because if you combine languages like that, it's unintelligible. But if you combine movements with sounds, they enhance each other and you get a different sense of experience. At a certain point in my life, I like to compose rituals. Rituals in the sense that it is shared by a community of people. Ritual ng pasasalamat is the ritual of thanksgiving for the gift of sound. I used almost all the instruments of the college there, both Western and Eastern and non-Western instruments. It uses 5 pianos, for example. It has 2 string quartets, gamelan, and then the kulintang. The voice faculty, chanting. These are the gongs. This is for 1 hour. So that there will be 60 minutes. So for the 27th minute, they will play this. At the climax of that piece was a prayer of three different ministers. One was an imam, a Muslim priest. The other one was a Protestant minister, and the other one was a Catholic priest. And they were supposed to express their thanksgiving to the Lord, to God, for the gift of sound. So, is that music? Probably. But it's ritual. It's ritual. It has a certain purpose. You cannot perform that music in any other event. This ritual is only for this particular event.
I sympathize with the victim. We definitely have to protect people's lives. But salvaging by breaking the rule of law is no solution.
We have contributed more to government coffers in the balance of trade, no? Yet, it seems that we don't get the same support that government is giving these big industries.
Imagine a world of beautiful forests, clean rivers, and fresh air. No garbage, no toxic waste, no pollution. There are no concrete jungles, only gardens where plants and animals live in peace. Now imagine the opposite. Man is dead. His destruction of nature has led to the extinction of the entire human race. If the scenario is frightening, this is the story of Pulao.
Here is a god, Igadu, who is very powerful, a very powerful god. But he has all the human needs. He is lonely, no? He also falls in love. All of these human characteristics. So I had to portray him as having authority and power, but at the same time, there's a certain weakness in him because he cannot predict what his creation is going to do.
Santos portrays the different characters musically by giving each a signature melody. Certain instruments dominate each melody, helping define the character's personality. Igadu's signature melody, for example, is played on percussion instruments.
Of course, but at the same time, there is a rhythm that is not so powerful. And then here is this river, Pulao, who is the main character. She is very gentle, and there's always a flow, no, in her character. Her music is supported by guitars, no, guitars in a very flowing line. We are all involved in ecological issues. We are all involved about people cutting trees and people polluting the environment. This work is about that. And we are going to create a sound environment. And therefore, everybody will have to participate somehow or other. I'm trying to create an environment of sound. We are talking about environment also in the whole story. And so we want the audience to really be part of it, just as we are part of a larger universe, you know, of nature. 1, rest, 1, 2, rest, 1, 2, 3, rest, rest. there is a scene there which is the creation of the universe, of the world. And during this creation, each section of the audience will come in at certain times until the whole thing develops into one whole environmental sonority.
Why did you choose to portray yourself like this?
Probably it's because when I was doing a lot of so-called avant-garde works, I was like that.
What was in the head of this young man?
Well, he was thinking of these crazy musical things.
TINIG-TUNOG-AN is unique in the sense that it tries to accommodate natural occurrences as manifested in the kinds of instruments he's using.
He invented instruments that could not be fully controlled, the rhythm of which could not be predicted. Nature, he felt, would take its course and take care of that. Each carpenter was to lightly hammer nails into a slab of wood in rows, each row having a different size of nail. He asked the electrician to make a very crude synthesizer, one within his capacity to make. He made radio transistors into frequency modulating machines, the sound of which could not be controlled. Another instrument the artist used was one he called a bueva's wheel, which was played by mimeograph operator. He believes that music, to be truly Filipino, must reflect the Filipino past, the old philosophies which have been largely influenced by nature, religion, and to a certain extent, Western thought. It cannot be merely a study of the sound and structure of our ethnic music. There are different sources of sound, and anything that vibrates can be used in his music. These, he feels, are the sounds the rural folk can identify with because they are sounds close to them and to many aspects of their daily life. This was the Asian Composers League conference in Manila. That's Lou Harrison. Just recently, I became the artistic director of the ASEAN Flute Festival. And they have another festival, Gongs and Bamboo.
Are you playing that, Dam? Are you playing that? Banduria, Pico de Banduria, I'm sorry, Pico de Banduria. Kayo lang? Yeah. Ready. 3:46. 1, 2.
After the first International Rondalla Festival, there was a boom in the rondallas here in the Philippines. When I was the Secretary General of the National Music Competition for Young Artists, I opened a rondalla category in the competitions. And now, they consider me as the patron saint of Philippine rondalla now.
Taon ng ating Panginoon, 2016. Binagdaan ni Benigno S. Aquino III, Pangulo ng Pilipinas.
Tells me that I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to promote the arts and to continue my work. That's why I'm busier now than when I retired, you know. The festival started in 2003. I was the commissioner for the arts of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. Since our term was ending, I said, why don't we put up a festival? I thought immediately, why don't we have a rondalla festival? Because, you know, the rondalla, while we got this from Spain, we sort of modified it and made it into our very own patrimony, you know, a heritage. We are celebrating the 14th year of the International Rondalla Festival with a renewed strength and resolve to forge ahead into the future.
there is a need to further research the Rondalia diaspora and revive the presence of this musical heritage and encourage our fellow musicians abroad to develop their own artistic use of this instrument. In this way, we can really assert the power of the plucked string as a binding element in forging peace and unity among peoples of the world.
We always categorize everything. I really don't see the reason why we cannot eliminate this.
While we speak in different languages, we can easily, through music, understand each other.
I think it's also possible for music to eliminate this kind of distinction, this kind of nationalities of music. And it should be one whole.
The subtitle of this festival is Strings of Unity. We try to bring people around the world to unify through music. And you can see in this festival, there is the fado from Portugal, you know, this singing accompanied by string instruments. And Uganda, for example, they also have string instruments, but they have drums. And so it is really bringing all these musicians, all these artists together. It became bigger, you know. I just wanted to unify the world, for example, but now it's gotten bigger into the patrimony of the plucked string as being, you know, one of the oldest instruments in humanity. First known plucked string came from the sixth grandson of Adam. You know? I gave a paper during the symposium, the plucked string tradition in the world, that it started with the Middle East, and then it went to India, you know, it went to Europe, and then Europe transferred it to Asia, and then China also got this from India, you know, all these connections.
We should try to eliminate the boundaries between traditions. For example, in that particular concert, you were able to hear Bisay played by Rondalia, which is not very usual.
And so I would like to thank the prime movers of this festival, the National Commission for Culture and the Arts under National Artist Rio Alma, the City Government of Silay under the Honorable Mark Goles.
Unimaginable. Okay, let's have a festival of all the plucked strings in the world. And how to do that? He engages with institutions. it's more than the word practical. It has to do with knowing how to deal with the world.
Because all these opportunities are coming, I have to respond to them. Sama.
The provincial government of Negros Occidental, the Musicological Society of the Philippines, the UP College of Music, and the NAMCIA for giving us the force and leverage to mount this magnificent event.
Now, among the people from Kabayan, they're beginning to forget their own traditions. And I'm the one who returns them back with my studies, you know, with the things that I learned from them. So they are now appreciating the value of their own culture through the eyes of an outsider. What I do is try to still discover all the possible traditions that are uniquely Filipino and try to imbibe them so that I can enrich my expression by adapting elements from these traditions. This is what I would advise the young people, you know. We have so many different traditions here in the Philippines, and it's so rich.
Really very hard to keep up, to try to be them. But I'm not trying to be any of them. But I'm trying to marvel at what they're doing and trying to see, always looking back to, okay, this is what they are and what they have taught us. And so that's what Ramon Santos is to me. He's a father.
Nowadays, composers, especially the younger composers, the ones that came from after us, no? Our generation, no longer see the need or the quest for discovering who we really are and expressing this in their music, but takes it as a given that we are Filipino, we are Asian, and nothing can take that away, and we are aware of these things now. And so we are going to create the music that speaks who we are. In a way, we're benefiting from what they have done by making us conscious of Asian and Filipino music. And so now we're not burdened by that anymore. Or maybe that makes our music less convincing than
I don't know whether being Filipino should contain all of these traditions or not. I suppose it's very difficult. It's impossible. But at least you take root. You take root from these traditions and find the qualities that make these traditions unique. And those are the qualities by which you build.
Dr. Santos is the one always pushing us to continue establishing a Filipino identity as a young composer. But then again, in this age of the internet, in this age of multiple nationalities in one city, what should be Filipino as music?
Very complex people, very complex culture. It's very hard to separate all those layers. It's always merged and compounded into one big thing or big expression. I don't know, but it's always very hard to think of layers, to think of several different things going on at the same time. Because for us, it's just who we are. We are here in an Asian country, having a very Latin kind of attitude and religion. This is watching Netflix, and it's always one whole things, one complete things, and without any one of those layers, we are not complete.
The Philippines, because of this bicultural tradition, seems to be more free in trying to reinvent itself as against the other countries in Southeast Asia where their traditions already existed way before. In other words, it is both a curse and a blessing for us to be able to act in a freer manner in searching for our roots.